Anatomy and physiology. The word anatomy has Greek origin. A literal translation would be cutting open. Anatomy is the study of internal and external structures of the body and the physical relationships among body parts. Physiology, which also Greek origin, is the study of how organism performs their vital functions. A. Human cell. The cell is the basic structural and functional unit of all known living organisms. It is the smallest unit of life that is classified as a living thing and is often called the building block of life. The cell is one of the most basic units of life. There are millions of different types of cells. There are cells that are organisms unto themselves, such as microscopic amoeba and bacteria cells. And there are cells that only function when part of a larger organism, such as the cells that make up your body. The cell is the smallest unit of life in our bodies. In the body, there are brain cells, skin cells, liver cells, stomach cells, and the list goes on. All of these cells have unique functions and features, and all have some recognizable similarities. All cells have a skin, called the plasma membrane, protecting it from the outside environment. The cell membrane regulates the movement of water, nutrients, and wastes into and out of the cell. Inside of the cell membrane are the working parts of the cell. At the center of the cell is the cell nucleus. The cell nucleus contains the cell's DNA, the genetic code that coordinates protein synthesis. In addition to the nucleus, there are many organelles inside of the cell's small structures that help carry out the day to day operations of the cell. One important cellular organelle is the ribosome. Ribosomes participate in protein synthesis. The transcription phase of protein synthesis takes place in the cell nucleus. After this step is complete, the mRNA leaves the nucleus and travels to the cell's ribosomes, where translation occurs. Another important cellular organelle is the mitochondrion. Many mitochondria are often referred to as the power plants of the cell because many of the reactions that produce energy take place in mitochondria. Also important in the life of a cell are the lysosomes. Lysosomes are organelles that contain enzymes that aid in the digestion of nutrient molecules and other materials. Below is a labeled diagram of a cell to help you identify some of these structures. B. Tissues. Cells group together in the body to form tissues, a collection of similar cells that group together to perform a specialized function. There are four primary tissue types in the human body: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nerve tissue. Epithelial tissue. The cells of epithelial tissue pack tightly together and form continuous sheets that serve as linings in different parts of the body. Epithelial tissue serve as membranes lining organs and helping to keep the body's organs separate, in place, and protected. Some examples of epithelial tissue are the outer layer of the skin, the inside of the mouth and stomach, and the tissue surrounding the body's organs. 2. Connective tissue. There are many types of connective tissue in the body. Generally speaking, connective tissue adds support and structure to the body. Most types of connective tissue contain fibrous strands of the protein collagen that add strength to connective tissue. Some examples of connective tissue include the inner layers of skin, tendons, ligaments, cartilage, bone, and fat tissue. In addition to these more recognizable forms of connective tissue, blood is also considered a form of connective tissue. 3. Muscle tissue. Muscle tissue is a specialized tissue that can contract. Muscle tissue contains the specialized proteins actin and myosin that slide past one another and allow movement. Examples of muscle tissue are contained in the muscles throughout your body. 4. Nerve tissue. Nerve tissue contains two types of cells, neurons and glial cells. Nerve tissue has the ability to generate and conduct electrical signals in the body. These electrical messages are managed by nerve tissue in the brain and transmitted down the spinal cord to the body. Organs are the next level of organization in the body. An organ is a structure that contains at least two different types of tissue functioning together for a common purpose. There are many different organs in the body: the liver, kidneys, heart, even your skin is an organ. In fact, the skin is the largest organ in the human body and provides us with an excellent example for explanation purposes. The skin is composed of three layers: the epidermis, dermis, and subcutaneous layer. The epidermis is the outermost layer of skin. It consists of epithelial tissue in which the cells are tightly packed together, providing a barrier between the inside of the body and the outside world. Below the epidermis lies a layer of connective tissue called the dermis. In addition to providing support for the skin, the dermis has many other purposes. The dermis contains blood vessels that nourish skin cells. It contains nerve tissue that provides feeling in the skin. And it contains muscle tissue that is responsible for giving you goosebumps when you get cold or frightened. The subcutaneous layer is beneath the dermis and consists mainly of a type of connective tissue called adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is more commonly known as fat, and it helps cushion the skin and provide protection from cold temperatures. Organ systems. The human body is made up of several organ systems that work together as one unit. 12 major organ systems of the body are listed below, along with several organs that are associated with each system. 1. Skeletal system 2. Respiratory system 3. Muscular system 4. Digestive system 5. Circulatory system 6. Excretory system 7. Nervous system 8. Endocrine system 9. Reproductive system 10. Lymphatic immune system 11. Integumentary system 12. Sensory system. Human newborns have over 270 bones, some of which fuse together into a longitudinal axis, the axial skeleton, to which the appendicular skeleton is attached. 1. Axial skeleton. The axial skeleton 80 bones is formed by the vertebral column 26, the rib cage 12 pairs of ribs and the sternum, and the skull 22 bones and 7 associated bones. The upright posture of humans is maintained by the axial skeleton, which transmits the weight from the head, the trunk, and the upper extremities down to the lower extremities at the hip joints. The bones of the spine are supported by many ligaments. 2. Appendicular skeleton. The appendicular skeleton 126 bones is formed by the pectoral girdles 4, the upper limbs 60, the pelvic girdle 2, and the lower limbs 60. Their functions are to make locomotion possible and to protect the major organs of locomotion, digestion, excretion, and reproduction. Function of skeletal system 1. Support. The skeleton provides the framework which supports the body and maintains its shape. The pelvis. Associated ligaments and muscles provide a floor for the pelvic structures. Without the rib cages, costal cartilages, and intercostal muscles, the heart would collapse. Movement. The joints between bones permit movement, some allowing a wider range of movement than others, e.g., the ball and socket joint allows a greater range of movement than the pivot joint at the neck. Movement is powered by skeletal muscles, which are attached to the skeleton at various sites on bones. Muscles, bones, and joints provide the principal mechanics for movement, all coordinated by the nervous system. 3. Protection. The skeleton protects many vital organs. The skull protects the brain, the eyes, and the middle and inner ears. The vertebrae protect the spinal cord. The rib cage, spine, and sternum protect the human lungs, human heart, and major blood vessels. 4. Blood cell production. The skeleton is the site of hematopoiesis, the development of blood cells that takes place in the bone marrow. 5. Storage. Bone matrix can store calcium and is involved in calcium metabolism, and bone marrow can store iron and ferritin and is involved in iron metabolism. However, bones are not entirely made of calcium, but a mixture of chondroitin sulfate and hydroxyapatite, the latter making up 70% of a bone. Axial skeleton. The axial skeleton consists of the 80 bones along the central axis of the human body. It is composed of 6 parts: the human skull, the ossicles of the middle ear, the hyoid bone of the throat, the rib cage, sternum, and the vertebral column. The axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton together form the complete skeleton. Skull 20. 2 cranial bones, 8 parietal, 2 temporal, frontal, 1 occipital, 1 ethmoid, vomer, 1 auditory ossicles, 6 molars, 2 incus, 2 stapes, 2 vertebral column 20, 6 cervical vertebrae, 7 thoracic vertebrae, 12 lumbar vertebrae, 5 sacrum, 1 coccyx, 1 thoracic cage 20, 7 sternum, 3 manubrium, 1 body of sternum, 1 xiphoid process, 1 ribs 24. B. Appendicular skeleton. The appendicular skeleton is divided into 6 major regions. 1. Pectoral girdles, 4 bones, left and right clavicle 2 and scapula 2. 2. Arm and forearm, 6 bones, left and right humerus 2 arm, ulna 2 and radius 2 forearm. 3. Hands, 54 bones, left and right carpal 16, wrist, metacarpal 10, proximal phalanges 10, middle phalanges 8, distal phalanges 10. 4. Pelvis, 2 bones, left and right os coxae 2 ilium. 5. Thigh and leg 8 bones, femur 2 thigh, tibia 2, patella 2 knee, and fibula 2 leg 6. Feet and ankles 50, 2 bones, tarsals 14 ankle, metatarsals 10, proximal phalanges 10, middle phalanges 8, distal phalanges 10. 1.2 or ESPI or AETO or YSYSTEM. The respiratory system is the biological system that introduces respiratory gases to the interior and performs gas exchange in humans and other mammals. The anatomical features of the respiratory system include airways, lungs, and the respiratory muscles. Molecules of oxygen and carbon dioxide are passively exchanged by diffusion between the gaseous external environment and the blood. This exchange process occurs in the alveolar region of the lungs. Other animals, such as insects, have respiratory systems with very simple anatomical features, and in amphibians, even the skin plays a vital role in gas exchange. Function of the respiratory system. The function of the human respiratory system is to transport air into the lungs and to facilitate the diffusion of oxygen into the bloodstream. It also receives waste carbon dioxide from the blood and exhales it. The respiratory system consists of the following parts, divided into the upper and lower respiratory tracts. Parts of the upper respiratory tract: mouth, nose, and nasal cavity. The function of this part of the system is to warm, filter, and moisten the incoming air. Pharynx. Here, the throat divides into the tracheae windpipe and esophagus food pipe. There is also a small flap of cartilage called the epiglottis, which prevents food from entering the trachea. Larynx, this is also known as the voice box as it is where sound is generated. It also helps protect the trachea by producing a strong cough reflex if any solid objects pass the epiglottis. Parts of the lower respiratory tract trachea, also known as the windpipe, this is the tube which carries air from the throat into the lungs. It ranges from 20-25 mm in diameter and 10-16 cm in length. The inner membrane of the trachea is covered in tiny hairs called cilia, which catch particles of dust, which we can then remove through coughing. The trachea is surrounded by 15-20 C shaped rings of cartilage at the front and side, which help protect the trachea and keep it open. They are not complete circles due to the position of the esophagus immediately behind the trachea and the need for the trachea to partially collapse to allow the expansion of the esophagus when swallowing large pieces of food. Bronchi, the trachea divides into two tubes called bronchi, one entering the left and one entering the right lung. The left bronchi is narrower, longer, and more horizontal than the right. Irregular rings of cartilage surround the bronchi, whose walls also consist of smooth muscle. Once inside the lung, the bronchi split several ways, forming tertiary bronchi. Bronchials, tertiary bronchi continue divide and become bronchioles, very narrow tubes, less than 1 millimeter in diameter. There is no cartilage within the bronchioles and they lead to alveolar sacs. Alveoli, individual hollow cavities contained within alveolar sacs or ducts. Alveoli have very thin walls which permit the exchange of gases oxygen and carbon dioxide. They are surrounded by a network of capillaries into which the inspired gases pass. There are approximately 3 million alveoli within an average adult lung. Diaphragm. The diaphragm is a broad band of muscle which sits underneath the lungs, attaching to the lower ribs, sternum, and lumbar spine and forming the base of the thoracic cavity. 1.3 MUSCULARSYSTEM. The muscular system is an organ system consisting of skeletal, smooth, and cardiac muscles. It permits movement of the body, maintains posture, and circulates blood throughout the body. The muscular system in vertebrates is controlled through the nervous system, although some muscles, such as the cardiac muscle, can be completely autonomous. Muscle types. There are three types of muscle tissue: visceral, cardiac, and skeletal. Visceral muscle is found inside of organs like the stomach, intestines, and blood vessels. The weakest of all muscle tissues, visceral muscle makes organs contract to move substances through the organ. Because visceral muscle is controlled by the unconscious part of the brain, it is known as involuntary muscle. It cannot be directly controlled by the conscious mind. The term smooth muscle is often used to describe visceral muscle because it has a very smooth, uniform appearance when viewed under a microscope. This smooth appearance starkly contrasts with the banded appearance of cardiac and skeletal muscles. Cardiac muscle found only in the heart. Cardiac muscle is responsible for pumping blood throughout the body. Cardiac muscle tissue cannot be controlled consciously, so it is an involuntary muscle. While hormones and signals from the brain adjust the rate of contraction, cardiac muscle stimulates itself to contract. The natural pacemaker of the heart is made of cardiac muscle tissue that stimulates other cardiac muscle cells to contract. Because of its self stimulation, cardiac muscle is considered to be autorhythmic or intrinsically controlled. The cells of cardiac muscle tissue are striated, that is, they appear to have light and dark stripes when viewed under a light microscope. The arrangement of protein fibers inside of the cells causes these light and dark bands. Striations indicate that a muscle cell is very strong, unlike visceral muscles. The cells of cardiac muscle are branch checks or Y shaped cells tightly connected together by special junctions called intercalated discs. Intercalated discs are made up of finger like projections from two neighboring cells that interlock and provide a strong bond between the cells. Skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle is the only voluntary muscle tissue in the human body. It is controlled consciously. Every physical action that a person consciously performs, e.g., speaking, walking, or writing, requires skeletal muscle. The function of skeletal muscle is to contract to move parts of the body closer to the bone that the muscle is attached to. Most skeletal muscles are attached to two bones across a joint, so the muscle serves to move parts of those bones closer to each other. Skeletal muscle cells form when many smaller progenitor cells lump themselves together to form long, straight, multinucleated fibers. Striated just like cardiac muscle, these skeletal muscle fibers are very strong. Skeletal muscle derives its name from the fact that these muscles always connect to the skeleton in at least one place. Function of muscle tissue. The main function of the muscular system is movement. Muscles are the only tissue in the body that has the ability to contract and therefore move the other parts of the body. The maintenance of posture and body position. Muscles often contract to hold the body still or in a particular position rather than to cause movement. The muscles responsible for the body's posture have the greatest endurance of all muscles in the body. They hold up the body throughout the day without becoming tired. Another function related to movement is the movement of substances inside the body. The cardiac and visceral muscles are primarily responsible for transporting substances like blood or food from one part of the body to another. The final function of muscle tissue is the generation of body heat. As a result of the high metabolic rate of contracting muscle, our muscular system produces a great deal of waste heat. 1.4 DIGESTIVSYSTEM. The human digestive system is a complex process that consists of breaking down large organic masses into smaller particles that the body can use as fuel. The breakdown of the nutrients requires the coordination of several enzymes secreted from specialized cells within the mouth, stomach, intestines, and liver. The major organs or structures that coordinate digestion within the human body include the mouth, esophagus, stomach, small and large intestine, and liver. Function of digestive system. The digestive system processes, breaks down, and absorbs the nutrients from food. Digesting food is to break down the complex molecules of the food to simpler ones so the body can use it in the way it wants to. The function of each organ in the digestive system is to help convert food into simpler molecules so it can absorbed by your body and can then be used by the cells. A mouth in the human body. The mouth oral cavity is a specialized organ for receiving food and breaking up large organic masses. In the mouth, food is changed mechanically by biting and chewing. Humans have four kinds of teeth. Incisors are chisel shaped teeth in the front of the mouth for biting. Canines are pointed teeth for tearing, and premolars and molars are flattened, ridged teeth for grinding, pounding, and crushing food. In the mouth, food is moistened by saliva, a sticky fluid that binds food particles together into a soft mass. Three pairs of salivary glands, the parotid glands, the submaxillary glands, and the sublingual glands, secrete saliva into the mouth. The saliva contains an enzyme called amylase, which digests starch molecules into smaller molecules of the disaccharide maltose. Esophagus. The esophagus is a thick walled muscular tube located behind the windpipe that extends through the neck and chest to the stomach. The bolus of food moves through the esophagus by peristalsis, or rhythmic series of muscular contractions that propels the bolus along. The contractions are assisted by the pull of gravity. See stomach. The esophagus joins the stomach at a point just below the diaphragm. A valve like ring of muscle called the cardiac sphincter surrounds the opening to the stomach. The sphincter relaxes as the bolus passes through and then quickly closes. The stomach is an expandable pouch located high in the abdominal cavity. Layers of stomach muscle contract and churn the bolus of food with gastric juices to form a soapy liquid called chyme. The stomach stores food and prepares it for further digestion. In addition, the stomach plays a role in protein digestion. Gastric glands called chief cells secrete pepsinogen. Pepsinogen is converted to the enzyme pepsin in the presence of hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is secreted by parietal cells in the stomach lining. The pepsin then digests large proteins into smaller proteins called peptides. To protect the stomach lining from the acid, a third type of cell secretes mucus that lines the stomach cavity. An overabundance of acid due to mucus failure may lead to an ulcer. D. Small intestine. The soupy mixture called chyme spurts from the stomach through a sphincter into the small intestine. An adult small intestine is about 23 feet long and is divided into three sections. The first 10 to 12 inches form the duodenum. The next 10 feet form the jejunum, and the final 12 feet form the ileum. The inner surface of the small intestine contains numerous finger like projections called villi. Each villus has projections of cells called microvilli to increase the surface area. Most chemical digestion takes place in the duodenum. In this region, enzymes digest nutrients into simpler forms that can be absorbed. Intestinal enzymes are supplemented by enzymes from the pancreas, a large glandular organ lying near the stomach. In addition, bile enters the small intestine from the gallbladder to assist in fat digestion. The enzymes functioning in carbohydrate digestion include amylase for starch, maltase for maltose, sucrase for sucrose, and lactase for lactose. For fats, the principal enzyme is lipase. Before this enzyme can act, the large globules of fat must be broken into smaller droplets by bile. Bile is a mixture of salts, pigments, and cholesterol that is produced by the liver and stored in the gallbladder, a sac like structure underneath the liver. Protein digestion is accomplished by several enzymes, including two pancreatic enzymes, trypsin and chymotrypsin. Peptides are broken into smaller peptides, and peptidases reduce the enzymes to amino acids. Nucleases digest nucleic acids into nucleotides in the small intestine also. Most absorption in the small intestine occurs in the jejunum. The products of digestion enter cells of the villi, move across the cells, and enter blood vessels called capillaries. Diffusion accounts for the movement of many nutrients, but active transport is responsible for the movement of glucose and amino acids. The products of fat digestion pass as small droplets of fat into lacteals, which are branches of the lymphatic system. Absorption is completed in the final part of the small intestine, the ileum. Substances that have not been digested or absorbed then pass into the large intestine. E. Large intestine. The small intestine joins the large intestine in the lower right abdomen of the body. The two organs meet at a blind sac called the cecum and a small finger like process called the appendix. Evolutionary biologists believe the cecum and appendix are vestiges of larger organs that may have been functional in human ancestors. The large intestine is also known as the colon. It is divided into ascending, transverse, and descending portions, each about 1 foot in length. The colon's chief functions are to absorb water and to store, process, and eliminate the residue following digestion and absorption. The intestinal matter remaining after water has been reclaimed is known as feces. Feces consist of non digested foods such as cellulose, billions of mostly harmless bacteria, bile pigments, and other materials. The feces are stored in the rectum and passed out through the anus to complete the digestion process. Liver. The liver has an important function in processing the products of human digestion. For example, cells of the liver remove excess glucose from the bloodstream and convert the glucose to a polymer called glycogen for storage. The liver also functions in amino acid metabolism. In a process called deamination, it converts some amino acids to compounds that can be used in energy metabolism. In doing so, the liver removes the amino groups from amino acids and uses the amino groups to produce urea. Urea is removed from the body in the urine. Fats are processed into 2 carbon units that can enter the Krebs cycle for energy metabolism. The liver also stores vitamins and minerals, forms many blood proteins, synthesizes cholesterol, and produces bile for fat digestion. G. Gallbladder. The gallbladder is a pear shaped reservoir that sits just under the liver and stores bile. Bile is made in the liver, then travels to the gallbladder through a channel called the cystic duct. During a meal, the gallbladder contracts, sending bile to the small intestine. Once the nutrients have been absorbed and the leftover liquid has passed through the small intestine, what is left of the food you ate is handed over to the large intestine or colon. Spleen. The spleen is similar in structure to a large lymph node. The spleen acts primarily as a blood filter. As such, it is a non vital organ, with life possible after removal. The spleen plays important roles in regard to its blood cells, also referred to as erythrocytes, and the immune system. In humans, it is located in the left upper quadrant of the abdomen. It removes old red blood cells and holds a reserve of blood in case of hemorrhagic shock, while also recycling iron. As a part of the mononuclear phagocyte system, it metabolizes hemoglobin removed from senescent erythrocytes. The globin portion of hemoglobin is degraded to its constitutive amino acids, and the heme portion is metabolized to bilirubin, which is subsequently shuttled to the liver for removal. 1.5 CIRCULAT or YSYSTE in the human circulatory system. The main organ of the circulatory system is the human heart. The other main parts of the circulatory system include the arteries, capillaries, venules, veins, and blood. The lungs also play a major part in the pulmonary circulation system. The essential components of the human cardiovascular system are the heart, blood, and blood vessels. It includes the pulmonary circulation, a loop through the lungs where blood is oxygenated, and the systemic circulation, a loop through the rest of the body to provide oxygenated blood. An average adult contains 5 to 6 quarts, roughly 4.7 to 5.7 liters of blood, accounting for approximately 7% of their total body weight. Blood consists of plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Also, the digestive system works with the circulatory system to provide the nutrients the system needs to keep the heart pumping. Functions of the circulatory system. The circulatory system is an organ system that passes nutrients such as amino acids, electrolytes, and lymph, gases, hormones, blood cells, etc., to and from cells in the body to help fight diseases, stabilize body temperature and pH, and to maintain homeostasis. The blood itself also carries numerous other substances which the body requires to function, the main substance being oxygen, carried by a protein called hemoglobin, found inside red blood cells. White blood cells are also vital in their role of fighting disease and infection. Occurs following an injury to stop blood loss. Blood also carries waste products, such as carbon dioxide, away from muscles and organs in order to be dispelled by the lungs. How the circulatory system works. There are three circulatory processes occurring simultaneously within the body. Firstly, systemic circulation carries blood around the body. Pulmonary circulation carries blood to the lungs, and coronary circulation provides the heart with its own supply of blood. Systemic circulation. At the start of the blood circulatory cycle, the heart pumps oxygenated blood out of the left ventricle through the aorta, the largest artery in the body. The aorta divides into smaller arteries, then arterioles, and finally into microscopic capillaries, found deep within muscles and organs. Here the oxygen and other nutrients passes through the thin capillary walls into the tissues where it can be used to produce the energy muscles require to contract. A waste product of energy production metabolism is carbon dioxide, and in order to be removed, it too passes across the walls of the capillaries into the bloodstream. The blood continues back towards the heart, through venules and then veins, into the right atrium. B. Pulmonary circulation. The pulmonary circulatory system is the portion of the cardiovascular system in which oxygen depleted blood is pumped away from the heart via the pulmonary artery to the lungs and returned oxygenated to the heart via the pulmonary vein. Oxygen deprived blood from the vena cava enters the right atrium of the heart and flows through the tricuspid valve, right atrioventricular valve, into the right ventricle, from which it is then pumped through the pulmonary semilunar valve into the pulmonary artery to the lungs. Gas exchange occurs in the lungs, whereby CO2 is released from the blood and oxygen is absorbed. The pulmonary vein returns the now oxygen rich blood to the heart. C. Coronary circulation. The coronary circulatory system provides a blood supply to the heart. As it provides oxygenated blood to the heart, it is by definition a part of the systemic circulatory system. The artery coronary sinus opens up into the right atrium, and the backflow of blood through its opening during atricular systole is guarded by the Bashan valve. A. The heart is a strong, powerful organ consisting of cardiac muscle. The heart pumps continuously without resting and without becoming fatigued. Its function is to pump blood to the lungs and around the body. The heart is one of the key organs in the circulatory system. The human heart is an organ that provides a continuous blood circulation through the cardiac cycle and is one of the most vital organs in the human body. The heart is divided into four main chambers. The two upper chambers are called the left and right atria, singular atrium, and two lower chambers are called the right and left ventricles. There is a thick wall of muscle separating the right side and the left side of the heart called the septum. Normally, with each beat, the right ventricle pumps the same amount of blood into the lungs that the left ventricle pumps out into the body. Physicians commonly refer to the right atrium and right ventricle together as the right heart and to the left atrium and left ventricle as the left heart. Anatomy of the heart. The heart consists of four chambers and is divided into left and right by a wall of muscle called the septum. The right side of the heart consists of an atrium, which receives blood returning from the body, and the right ventricle, which then pumps blood out to the lungs via the pulmonary artery. The left side again contains an atrium and a ventricle. The left atrium receives the oxygenated blood returning from the lungs, and the ventricle then pumps this blood around the body. Due to the distance which the blood being pumped from the left ventricle has to travel, a more forceful contraction is required. For this reason, the muscular wall of the left side is thicker than that of the right side. The atria and ventricles are separated by valves known as atrioventricular or AV valves. The purpose of these valves is to prevent blood from flowing in the wrong direction. Following the movement of blood from the atrium into the ventricle, the AV valve snaps shut, which causes the heart sound of the heartbeat, often described lub dub, with the closing of the AV valves being the lub. The dub sound is caused by the closing of two other valves, known as the semilunar or SL valves. These are located between each ventricle and the artery leaving the heart, and again prevent the blood flowing backwards. This box diagram shows blood flow through the human heart. B. Arteries. Arteries are blood vessels which carry blood away from the heart, all of which, with the exception of the pulmonary artery, carry oxygenated blood. The most widely known artery within the human body is the aorta. This is the largest of all blood vessels and transports blood away from the left ventricle of the heart, where it then branches into smaller arteries. As the arteries divide further, they become smaller and smaller until they are classed as arterioles. Arterioles continue to branch into smaller and smaller vessels, which, once they have decreased in size below 10 micrometers in diameter, are known as capillaries. The pulmonary artery is classed as an artery as it carries blood away from the heart. However, it carries deoxygenated blood. The blood it carries has traveled around the body and back to the heart, where it is pumped via the pulmonary artery to the lungs to release waste products and pick up more oxygen. C. Capillaries. Capillaries are the smallest of all blood vessels and form the connection between veins and arteries. As arteries branch and divide into arterioles and continue to reduce in size as they reach the muscle, they become capillaries. Here, the capillaries form a capillary bed, which is a vast expanse of very small vessels forming a network throughout the muscle. However, unlike veins and arteries, their main function is not transporting blood. They are specially designed to allow the movement of substances, mainly gases, oxygen, and carbon dioxide, into and out of the capillary. Gaseous exchange. The oxygen carried within the red blood cells as oxyhemoglobin at this point dissociates from the hemoglobin and passes through the capillary wall into the muscle cells, where it is picked up by myoglobin, the muscle cells equivalent to hemoglobin. The oxygen can now be used in aerobic metabolism to provide the muscle with energy. The waste product produced during aerobic metabolism is carbon dioxide. Due to the lower concentration of carbon dioxide in the capillaries than the muscle tissue, especially during high levels of metabolism, there is a surge through the capillary wall. From here, the blood continues into venules and then veins, which return the deoxygenated and CO2 rich blood back to the heart and then onto the lungs, where the CO2 is exhaled and more oxygen is taken up. D. Veins are blood vessels which carry deoxygenated or very low levels of oxygen blood back to the heart. The exception to this rule is the pulmonary vein, which carries oxygenated blood from the lungs back to the heart, ready to be pumped around the rest of the body. At tissue level, capillaries drain blood into venules, which are very small veins, which as they return to the heart merge into larger veins before reaching either the superior vena cava if returning from tissues and organs above the heart, or the inferior vena cava if returning from tissues and organs below to the heart. The inferior vena cava is larger than the superior vena cava. These two large arteries merge and return blood to the right atrium of the heart. Blood performs many important functions within the body, including supply of oxygen to tissues bound to hemoglobin, which is carried in red cells, supply of nutrients such as glucose, amino acids, and fatty acids dissolved in the blood or bound to plasma proteins, e.g., blood lipids, removal of waste such as carbon dioxide, urea, and lactic acid, immunological functions, including circulation of white blood cells and detection of foreign material by antibodies, coagulation, which is one part of the body's self repair mechanism, messenger functions, including the transport of hormones and the signaling of tissue damage, regulation of body pH, regulation of core body temperature. D. Veins are blood vessels which carry deoxygenated or very low levels of oxygen blood back to the heart. The exception to this rule is the pulmonary vein, which carries oxygenated blood from the lungs back to the heart, ready to be pumped around the rest of the body. Constituents of human blood accounts for 7% of the human body weight, with an average density of approximately 1060 kg3, very close to pure water's density of 1000 kg3. The average adult has a blood volume of roughly 5 liters 1.3 gal, which is composed of plasma and several kinds of cells. These blood cells consist of erythrocytes, red blood cells, RBCs, leukocytes, white blood cells, and thrombocytes, platelets. By volume, the red blood cells constitute about 45% of whole blood, the plasma about 54.3%, and white cells about 0.7%. Whole blood plasma and cells exhibits non-Newtonian fluid dynamics. Its flow properties are adapted to flow effectively through tiny capillary blood vessels with less resistance than plasma by itself. In addition, if all human hemoglobin were free in the plasma rather than being contained in RBCs, the circulatory fluid would be too viscous for the cardiovascular system to function effectively. Cell erythrocytes 4.7 to 6.1 million male, 4.2 to 5.4 million female. Red blood cells contain the blood's hemoglobin and distribute oxygen. Mature red blood cells lack a nucleus and organelles in mammals. The red blood cells, together with endothelial vessel cells and other cells, are also marked by glycoproteins that define the different blood types. The proportion of blood occupied by red blood cells is referred to as the hematocrit and is normally about 45%. The combined surface area of all red blood cells of the human body would be roughly 2000 times as great as the body's exterior surface. Leukocytes 4,000 11,000. White blood cells are part of the body's immune system. They destroy and remove old or aberrant cells and cellular debris, as well as attack infectious agents, pathogens, and foreign substances. The cancer of leukocytes is called leukemia. Thrombocytes 200,000 500,000, also called platelets. Thrombocytes are responsible for blood clotting coagulation. They change fibrinogen into fibrin. This fibrin creates a mesh onto which red blood cells collect and clot, which then stops more blood from leaving the body and also helps to prevent bacteria from entering the body. Plasma, about 55% of blood is blood plasma, a fluid that is the blood's liquid medium, which by itself is straw yellow in color. The blood plasma volume totals of 2.73.0 liters, 2.83.2 quarts in an average human. It is essentially an aqueous solution containing 92% water, 8% blood plasma proteins, and trace amounts of other materials. Plasma circulates dissolved nutrients, such as glucose, amino acids, and fatty acids dissolved in the blood or bound to plasma proteins, and removes waste products, such as carbon dioxide, urea, and lactic acid. Other important components include serum albumin, blood clotting factors to facilitate coagulation, immunoglobulins, antibodies, lipoprotein, particles, various other proteins, various electrolytes, mainly sodium and chloride. The term serum refers to plasma from which the clotting proteins have been removed. Most of the proteins remaining are albumin and immunoglobulins. 1.6 Excretory system. The excretory system is a passive biological system that removes excess unnecessary materials from an organism so as to help maintain homeostasis within the organism and prevent damage to the body. It is responsible for the elimination of the waste products of metabolism as well as other liquid and gaseous wastes, as urine and as a component of sweat and exhalation. As most healthy functioning organs produce metabolic and other wastes, the entire organism depends on the function of the system. 1. Excretory functions. The excretory system removes metabolic and liquid toxic wastes as well as excess water from the organism in the form of urine. The excretory system is a passive biological system that removes excess and unnecessary materials from an organism so as to help maintain homeostasis within the organism and prevent damage to the body. It is responsible for the elimination of the waste products of metabolism as well as other liquid and gaseous wastes. As most healthy functioning organs produce metabolic and other wastes, the entire organism depends on the function of the system. However, only the organs specifically for the excretion process are considered a part of the excretory system. Organs of the excretory system: 1. Lungs, removal of excess carbon dioxide. 2. Liver produces urea and uric acid as a byproduct of the breakdown of proteins. 3. Skin, removal of excess water, salt, urea and uric acid. 4. Urinary system: kidneys filter the blood to form urine, which is excess water, salt, urea and uric acid. Urinary system: the urinary system is made up of the kidneys, ureters, bladder and urethra. The nephron, an evolutionary modification of the nephridium, is the kidney's functional unit. Waste is filtered from the blood and collected as urine in each kidney. Urine leaves the kidneys by ureters and collects in the bladder. The bladder can distend to store urine that eventually leaves through the urethra. A. Kidneys. The kidneys are organs that serve several essential regulatory roles in most animals, including vertebrates and some invertebrates. They are essential in the urinary system and also serve homeostatic functions such as the regulation of electrolytes, maintenance of acid base balance, and regulation of blood pressure via maintaining salt and water balance. They serve the body as a natural filter of the blood and remove wastes which are diverted to the urinary bladder. In producing urine, the kidneys excrete wastes such as urea and ammonium, and they are also responsible for the reabsorption of water, glucose, and amino acids. The kidneys also produce hormones including calcitriol erythropoietin and the enzyme renin. Located at the rear of the abdominal cavity in the retroperitoneum, the kidneys receive blood from the paired renal arteries and drain into the paired renal veins. Each kidney excretes urine into a ureter, itself a paired structure that empties into the urinary bladder. The nephron consists of a cup-shaped capsule containing capillaries and the glomerulus and a long renal tube. Blood flows into the kidney through the renal artery, which branches into capillaries associated with the glomerulus. Arterial pressure causes water and solutes from the blood to filter into the capsule. Fluid flows through the proximal tubule, which include the loop of Henle, and then into the distal tubule. The distal tubule empties into a collecting duct. Fluids and solutes are returned to the capillaries that surround the nephron tubule. The nephron has three functions: glomerular filtration of water and solutes from the blood, tubular reabsorption of water and conserved molecules back into the blood, tubular secretion of ions and other waste products from surrounding capillaries into the distal tubule. Nephrons filter 125 ml of body fluid per minute, filtering the entire body fluid component 16 times each day. In a 24-hour period, nephrons produce 180 liters of filtrate, of which 178.5 liters are reabsorbed. The remaining 1.5 liters forms urine. Components of the nephron: glomerulus mechanically filters blood, Bowman's capsule mechanically filters blood, proximal convoluted tubule reabsorbs 75% of the water, salts, glucose, and amino acids, loop of Henle countercurrent exchange, which maintains the concentration gradient, distal convoluted tubule, tubular secretion of avines, potassium, and certain drugs, urine production, filtration in the glomerulus and nephron capsule, reabsorption in the proximal tubule, tubular secretion in the loop of Henle. Kidney function: kidneys perform a number of homeostatic functions: maintain volume of extracellular fluid, maintain ionic balance. Extracellular fluid: maintain pH and osmotic concentration of the extracellular fluid. Excrete toxic metabolic byproducts such as urea, ammonia, and uric acid. B. Ureter: the ureters are muscular ducts that propel urine from the kidneys to the urinary bladder. In the human adult, the ureters are usually 25-30 cm 10-12 in long. In humans, the ureters arise from the renal pelvis on the medial aspect of each kidney before descending towards the bladder on the front of the psoas, major muscle. The ureters cross the pelvic brim near the bifurcation of the iliac arteries, which they run over. This pelviarteric junction is a common site for the impaction of kidney stones, the other being the uretrovesical valve. The ureters run posteriorly on the lateral walls of the pelvis. C. Urinary bladder. The urinary bladder is the organ that collects urine excreted by the kidneys prior to disposal by urination. It is a hollow muscular and distensible or elastic organ and sits on the pelvic floor. Urine enters the bladder via the ureters and exits via the urethra. Embryologically, the bladder is derived from the urogenital sinus and it is initially continuous with the allantois. In human males, the base of the bladder lies between the rectum and the pubic symphysis. It is superior to the prostate and separated from the rectum by the rectovesical excavation. In females, the bladder sits inferior to the uterus and anterior to the vagina. It is separated from the uterus by the vesicotrine excavation. In infants and young children, the urinary bladder is in the abdomen even when empty. D. Urethra in anatomy. The from Greek urethra is a tube which connects the urinary bladder to the outside of the body. In humans, the urethra has an excretory function in both genders to pass. 1.7 Nervous system. The nervous system is essentially a biological information highway and is responsible for controlling all the biological processes and movement in the body, and can also receive information and interpret it via electrical signals which are used in this nervous system. It consists of the central nervous system CNS, essentially the processing area, and the peripheral nervous system, which detects and sends electrical impulses that are used in the nervous system. Functions of the nervous system. There are three general functions of the nervous system in man and animals. 1. Sensing specific information about external and internal conditions in the example above. This is seeing your friend. 2. Integrating that information. This is the understanding of the information coming from the eyes. 3. Issuing commands for response from the muscles or glands. This is the reaction of walking towards him. The central nervous system CNS. The central nervous system is effectively the center of the nervous system, the part of it that processes the information received from the peripheral nervous system. The CNS consists of the brain and spinal cord. It is responsible for receiving and interpreting signals from the peripheral nervous system and also sends out signals to it, either consciously or unconsciously. This information highway called the nervous system consists of many nerve cells, also known as neurons, as seen below. The nerve cell. Each neuron consists of a nucleus situated in the cell body, where outgrowths called processes originate from. The main one of these processes is the axon, which is responsible for carrying outgoing messages from the cell. This axon can originate from the CNS and extend all the way to the body's extremities, effectively providing a highway for messages to go to and from the CNS to these body extremities. Dendrites are smaller secondary processes that grow from the cell body and axon. On the end of these dendrites lie the axon terminals, which plug into a cell where the electrical signal from a nerve cell to the target cell can be made. This plug, the axon terminal, connects into a receptor on the target cell and can transmit information between cells. Types of neurons. The three main types of neurons are multipolar neurons, are so named because they have many multiprocesses that extend from the cell body, lots of dendrites plus a single axon. Functionally, these neurons are either motor ducting impulses that will cause activity such as the contraction of muscles or association conducting impulses and permitting communication between neurons within the central nervous system. Unipolar neurons have but one process from the cell body. However, that single, very short process splits into longer processes, a dendrite plus an axon. Unipolar neurons are sensory neurons conducting impulses into the central nervous system. Bipolar neurons have two processes, one axon, one dendrite. These neurons are also sensory. For example, biopolar neurons can be found in the retina of the eye. Peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system PNS contains only nerves and connects the brain and spinal cord CNS to the rest of the body. The axons and dendrites are surrounded by a white myelin sheath. Cell bodies are in the central nervous system CNS or ganglia. Ganglia are collections of nerve cell bodies. Cranial nerves in the PNS take impulses to and from the brain CNS. Spinal nerves take impulses to and away from the spinal cord. There are two major subdivisions of the PNS motor pathways, the somatic and the autonomic. Two main components of the PNS: sensory afferent pathways that provide input from the body into the CNS. Motor efferent pathways that carry signals to muscles and glands effectors. Most sensory input carried in the PNS remains below the level of conscious awareness. Input that does reach the conscious level contributes to perception of our external environment. B. Somatic nervous system. The somatic nervous system SNS includes all nerves controlling the muscular system and external sensory receptors. External sense organs including skin are receptors. Muscle fibers and gland cells are effectors. The reflex arc is an automatic, involuntary reaction to a stimulus. When the doctor taps your knee with the rubber hammer, she is testing your reflex or knee jerk. The reaction to the stimulus is involuntary, with the CNS being informed but not consciously controlling the response. Examples of reflex arcs include balance, the blinking reflex, and the stretch reflex. Sensory input from the PNS is processed by the CNS and responses are sent by the PNS from the CNS to the organs of the body. Motor neurons of the somatic system are distinct from those of the autonomic system. Inhibitory signals cannot be sent through the motor neurons of the somatic system. C. Autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is that part of PNS consisting of motor neurons that control internal organs. It has two subsystems. The autonomic system controls muscles in the heart, the smooth muscle in internal organs such as the intestine, bladder, and uterus. The sympathetic nervous system is involved in the fight or flight response. The parasympathetic nervous system is involved in relaxation. Each of these subsystems operates in the reverse of the other antagonism. Both systems innervate the same organs and act in opposition to maintain homeostasis. For example, when you are scared, the sympathetic system causes your heart to beat faster. The parasympathetic system reverses this effect. Motor neurons in this system do not reach their targets directly as do those in the somatic system, but rather connect to a secondary motor neuron, which in turn innervates the target organ. D. Central nervous system. The central nervous system CNS is composed of the brain and spinal cord. The CNS is surrounded by bone, skull, and vertebrae. Fluid and tissue also insulate the brain and spinal cord. The brain is composed of three parts: the cerebrum, seat of consciousness, the cerebellum, and the medulla oblongata. These latter two are part of the unconscious brain. The medulla oblongata is closest to the spinal cord and is involved with the regulation of heartbeat, breathing, vasoconstriction, blood pressure, and reflex centers for vomiting, coughing, sneezing, swallowing, and hiccuping. The hypothalamus regulates homeostasis. It has regulatory areas for thirst, hunger, body temperature, water balance, and blood pressure, and links the nervous system to the endocrine system. The midbrain and pons are also part of the unconscious brain. The thalamus serves as a central relay point for incoming nervous messages. The cerebellum is the second largest part of the brain, after the cerebrum. It functions for muscle coordination and maintains normal muscle tone and posture. The cerebellum coordinates balance. The conscious brain includes the cerebral hemispheres, which are separated by the corpus callosum. In reptiles, birds, and mammals, the cerebrum coordinates sensory data and motor functions. The cerebrum governs intelligence and reasoning, learning, and memory. While the cause of memory is not yet definitely known, studies on slugs indicate learning is accompanied by a synapse decrease within the cell. Learning involves change in gene regulation and increased ability to secrete transmitters. A. Spinal cord. The spinal cord of the central nervous system is a white cord of tissue passing through the bony tunnel made by the vertebrae. The spinal cord extends from the base of the brain to the bottom of the backbone. Three membranes called meninges surround the spinal cord and protect it. The outer tissue of the spinal cord is white matter, while the inner tissue is gray matter. 31 pairs of projections called nerve roots extend out along each side of the spinal cord. The nerve roots are sites of axons belonging to sensory and motor neurons. A central canal in the spinal cord carries cerebrospinal fluid, which provides for the nutrition and gaseous needs of the cord tissue. The neurons of the spinal cord serve as a coordinating center for the reflex arc and a connecting system between the peripheral nervous system and the brain. The brain of the central nervous system, is the organizing and processing center. It is the site of consciousness, sensation, memory, and intelligence. The brain receives impulses from the spinal cord and from 12 pairs of cranial nerves coming from and extending to the senses and to other organs. In addition, the brain initiates activities without environmental stimuli. Two major hemispheres, the left and the right hemispheres, make up the tissue of the brain. The outer portion of the brain consists of gray matter, while the inner portion is white matter. Three major portions of the brain are recognized: the hindbrain, the midbrain, and the forebrain. The hindbrain consists of the medulla, cerebellum, and pons. The medulla is the swelling at tip of the brain that serves as the passageway for nerves extending to and from the brain. The cerebellum lies adjacent to the medulla and serves as a coordinating center for motor activity. That is, it coordinates muscle contractions. The pons is the swelling between the medulla and midbrain. The pons acts as a bridge between various portions of the brain. The midbrain lies between the hindbrain and forebrain. It consists of a collection of crossing nerve tracts and is the site of the reticular formation, a group of fibers that arouse the forebrain when something unusual happens. The forebrain consists of the cerebrum, the thalamus, the hypothalamus, and the limbic system. The cerebrum contains creases and furrows called convolutions that permit the cerebral hemisphere to accommodate more than 10 billion cells. Each hemisphere of the cerebrum has four lobes, and activities such as speech, vision, movement, hearing, and smell occur in these lobes. Higher mental activities such as learning, memory, logic, creativity, and emotion also occur in the cerebrum. The thalamus serves as an integration point for sensory impulses. While the hypothalamus synthesizes hormones for storage in the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus also appears to be a control center for such visceral functions as hunger, thirst, body temperature, and blood pressure. The limbic system is a collection of structures that ring the edge of the brain and apparently function as centers of emotion. 1.8 and DOCRINESYSTSTEM, the endocrine system is the system of glands, each of which secretes different types of hormones directly into the bloodstream, some of which are transported along nerve tracts to regulate the body. The endocrine system is in contrast to the exocrine system, which secretes its chemicals using ducts. The word endocrine derives from the Greek words endo, meaning inside, within, and crines for secrete. The endocrine system is an information signal system like the nervous system, yet its effects and mechanism are classifiably different. The endocrine system's effects are slow to initiate and prolonged in their response, lasting from a few hours up to weeks. The nervous system sends information very quickly, and responses are generally short lived. Hormones are substances, chemical mediators released from endocrine tissue into the bloodstream, where they travel to target tissue and generate a response. Hormones regulate various human functions, including metabolism, growth and development, tissue function, and mood. The field of study dealing with the endocrine system and its disorders is endocrinology, a branch of internal medicine. Features of endocrine glands are, in general, their ductless nature, their vascularity, and usually the presence of intracellular vacuoles or granules storing their hormones. In contrast, exocrine glands, such as salivary glands, sweat glands, and glands within the gastrointestinal tract, tend to be much less vascular and have ducts or a hollow lumen. Pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is located at the base of the human brain. The gland consists of two parts, the anterior lobe adenohypophysis and the posterior lobe neurohypophysis. The anterior lobe secretes at least 7 hormones. One hormone, the human growth hormone each promotes body growth by accelerating protein synthesis. This hormone is also known as somatotropin. A deficiency of the hormone results in dwarfism. An oversecretion results in gigantism. Another hormone of the anterior pituitary is prolactin, also called lactogenic hormone LH. This hormone promotes breast development and milk secretion in females. A third hormone is thyroid stimulating hormone TSH. The function of TSH is to control secretions of hormones from the thyroid gland. A fourth hormone is adrenocorticotropic hormone ACTH. This hormone controls the secretion of hormones from the adrenal glands. There are 3 more hormones produced in the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. The first is follicle stimulating hormone FSH. In females, FSH stimulates the development of a follicle, which contains the egg cell. In males, the hormone stimulates sperm production. The next hormone is luteinizing hormone LH. In females, LH completes the maturation of the follicle and stimulates the formation of the corpus luteum, which temporarily secretes female hormones. In males, LH is interstitial cell stimulating hormone ICSH, which stimulates the production of male hormones in the testes. The final hormone is melanocyte stimulating hormone MSH, which stimulates production of the pigment melanin. The posterior pituitary gland stores and then releases 2 hormones that are produced in the hypothalamus of the brain. The first hormone is antidiuretic hormone ADH. This hormone stimulates water reabsorption in the kidneys. It is also called vasopressin. The second hormone is oxytocin, which stimulates contractions in the muscles of the uterus during birth. B. Thyroid gland. The thyroid gland lies against the pharynx at the base of the neck. It consists of 2 lateral lobes connected by an isthmus. The gland produces thyroxine, a hormone that regulates the rate of metabolism in the body. It also produces a second hormone, calcitonin, which regulates the level of calcium in the blood. Thyroxine production depends on the availability of iodine. A deficiency of iodine causes thyroid gland enlargement, a condition called goiter. An undersecretion of thyroxine results in a condition known as cretinism dwarfism with abnormal body proportions and possible mental retardation. In adults, an undersecretion results in myxedema, physical and mental sluggishness. Thyroxine oversecretion results in a high metabolic rate and Graves' disease. C. Parathyroid glands. The parathyroid glands are located on the posterior surfaces of the thyroid gland. They are tiny masses of glandular tissue that produce parathyroid hormone, also called parathormone. Parathyroid hormone regulates calcium metabolism in the body by increasing calcium reabsorption in the kidneys and by increasing the uptake of calcium from the digestive system. D. Adrenal glands. The adrenal glands are 2 pyramid-shaped glands lying atop the kidneys. The adrenal glands consist of an outer portion, the cortex, and an inner portion, the medulla. The adrenal cortex secretes a family of steroids called corticosteroids. The 2 main types of steroid hormones are mineralocorticoids and glucocorticoids. mineralocorticoids, such as aldosterone, control mineral metabolism in the body. They accelerate mineral reabsorption in the kidney. Mineralocorticoid secretion is regulated by ACTH from the pituitary gland. Glucocorticoids, such as cortisol and cortisone, control glucose metabolism and protein synthesis in the body. Glucocorticoids are also anti inflammatory agents. The adrenal medulla produces two hormones, epinephrine adrenaline and norepinephrine noradrenaline. Epinephrine increases heart rate, blood pressure, and the blood supply to skeletal muscle. Epinephrine functions in stressful situations to promote the fight flight response. Norepinephrine intensifies the effects of epinephrine. Both hormones prolong and intensify the effects of the sympathetic nervous system. Pancreas. The pancreas is located just behind the stomach. Its endocrine portion consists of cell clusters called the islets of Langerhans. The pancreas produces two hormones, insulin and glucagon. Insulin is a protein that promotes the passage of glucose molecules into the body cells and regulates glucose metabolism. In the absence of insulin, glucose is removed from the blood and excreted in the kidney, a condition called diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus is characterized by glucose in the urine, heavy urination, excessive thirst, and a generally sluggish body metabolism. The second pancreatic hormone, glucagon, stimulates the breakdown of glycogen to glucose in the liver. It also releases fat from the adipose tissue, so the fat can be used for the production of carbohydrates. Other endocrine glands. Among the other endocrine glands are the ovaries and testes. The ovaries secrete estrogens, which encourage the development of secondary female characteristics. The testes secrete androgens, which promote secondary male characteristics. Testosterone is an important androgen. 1.9 or EPR or DUCTIVESYSTEMAMA or EPR or DUCTI. VESYSTEM human male reproductive system or male genital system consists of a number of sex organs that are a part of the human reproductive process. In this type of reproductive system, these sex organs are located outside the body, around the pelvic region. The main male sex organs are the penis and the testes, which produce semen and sperm, which as part of sexual intercourse fertilize an ovum in female's body, and the fertilized ovum zygote gradually develops into a fetus, which is later born as a child. External genital organs. Penis is the male copulatory organ. It has a long shaft and enlarged bulbous shaped tip called the glans penis, which supports the foreskin. When the male becomes sexually aroused, the penis becomes erect and ready for sexual activity. Erection occurs because sinuses within the erectile tissue of the penis become filled with blood. The arteries of the penis are dilated while the veins are passively compressed so that blood flows into the erectile cartilage under pressure. Scrotum. The scrotum is a pouch like structure that hangs behind the penis. It holds and protects the testes. It also contains numerous nerves and blood vessels. During times of lower temperatures, the cremaster muscle contracts and pulls the scrotum closer to the body, while the dartos muscle gives it a wrinkled appearance. When the temperature increases, the cremaster and dartos muscles relaxes to bring down the scrotum away from the body and remove the wrinkles respectively. The scrotum remains connected with the abdomen or pelvic cavity by the inguinal canal. The spermatic cord, formed from spermatic artery, vein and nerve bound together with connective tissue, passes into the testis through inguinal canal. B. Internal genital organs. Epididymis. The epididymis is a whitish mass of tightly coiled tubes cupped against the testicles. It acts as a maturation and storage place for sperm before they pass into the vas deferens, tubes that carry sperm to the ampullary gland and prostatic ducts. Vas deferens. The vas deferens, also known as the sperm duct, is a thin tube approximately 43.2 centimeters long that starts from the epididymis to the pelvic cavity. Accessory glands. Three accessory glands provide fluids that lubricate the duct system and nourish the sperm cells. They are the seminal vesicles, the prostate gland, and the bulbourethral glands, Cowper glands. Seminal vesicles. Seminal vesicles are sac-like structures attached to the vas deferens at one side of the bladder. They produce a sticky, yellowish fluid that contains fructose. This fluid provides sperm cells energy and aids in their motility. 70% of the semen is its secretion. Prostate gland. The prostate gland surrounds the ejaculatory ducts at the base of the urethra, just below the bladder. The prostate gland is responsible for the production of semen, a liquid mixture of sperm cells, prostate fluid, and seminal fluid. This gland is also responsible for making the semen milky by mixing calcium to the semen coming from seminal vesicles. Semen coming from seminal vesicle is transparent in color. This process is called profibrinolysin. 28 to 29% semen comprises its secretion. Bulbourethral glands. The bulbourethral glands, also called Cowper glands, are two small glands located on the sides of the urethra just below the prostate gland. These glands produce a clear, slippery fluid that empties directly the urethra. It produces substances related to nourishment of spermatozoa female reproductive system. The human female reproductive system or female genital system contains two main parts: the uterus, which hosts the developing fetus, produces vaginal and uterine secretions, and passes the male sperm through to the fallopian tubes, and the ovaries, which produce the female's egg cells. These parts are internal. The vagina meets the external organs at the vulva, which includes the labia, clitoris, and urethra. The vagina is attached to the uterus through the cervix, while the uterus is attached to the ovaries via the fallopian tubes. At certain intervals, the ovaries release an ovum, which passes through the fallopian tube into the uterus. External genitals, the female internal reproductive organs are the vagina, uterus, fallopian tubes, cervix, and ovary. Vagina, the vagina is a fibro-muscular tubular tract leading from the uterus to the exterior of the body in female mammals, or to the cloaca in female birds and some reptiles. Female insects and other invertebrates also have a vagina, which is the terminal part of the oviduct. The vagina is the place where semen from the male penis is deposited into the female's body at the climax of sexual intercourse, a phenomenon commonly known as ejaculation. The vagina is a canal that joins the cervix, the lower part of uterus, to the outside of the body. It also is known as the birth canal. Cervix, the cervix is the lower, narrow portion of the uterus where it joins with the top end of the vagina. It is cylindrical or conical in shape and protrudes through the upper anterior vaginal wall. Approximately half its length is visible. The remainder lies above the vagina beyond view. The vagina has a thick layer outside, and it is the opening where the fetus emerges during delivery. The cervix is also called the neck of the uterus. Uterus, the uterus or womb, is the major female reproductive organ of humans. The uterus provides mechanical protection, nutritional support, and waste removal for the developing embryo weeks 1 to 8 and fetus from week 9 until the delivery. In addition, contractions in the muscular wall of the uterus are important in pushing out the fetus at the time of birth. The uterus contains three suspensory ligaments that help stabilize the position of the uterus and limits its range of movement. The uterosacral ligaments keep the body from moving inferiorly and anteriorly. The round ligaments restrict posterior movement of the uterus. The cardinal ligaments also prevent the inferior movement of the uterus. Fallopian tubes, the fallopian tubes or oviducts, are two tubes leading from the ovaries of female mammals into the uterus. On maturity of an ovum, the follicle and the ovaries wall rupture, allowing the ovum to escape and enter the fallopian tube. There it travels toward the uterus, pushed along by movements of cilia on the inner lining of the tubes. This trip takes hours or days. If the ovum is fertilized while in the fallopian tube, then it normally implants in the endometrium when it reaches the uterus, which signals the beginning of pregnancy. Ovaries, the ovaries are small, paired organs that are located near the lateral walls of the pelvic cavity. These organs are responsible for the production of the ova and the secretion of hormones. Ovaries are the place inside the female body where ova or eggs are produced. The process by which the ovum is released is called ovulation. The speed of ovulation is periodic and impacts directly to the length of a menstrual cycle. After ovulation, the ovum is captured by the oviduct after traveling down the oviduct to the uterus, occasionally being fertilized on its way by an incoming sperm, leading to pregnancy and the eventual birth of a new human being. The fallopian tubes are often called the oviducts, and they have small hairs cilia to help the egg cell travel. Reproductive tract. The reproductive tract or genital tract is the lumen that starts as a single pathway through the vagina, splitting up into two lumens in the uterus, both of which continue through the fallopian tubes and ending at the distal ostia that open into the abdominal cavity. In the absence of fertilization, the ovum will eventually traverse the entire reproductive tract from the fallopian tube until exiting the vagina through menstruation. B. External genitals. The external components include the mons pubis, pudendal cleft, labia majora, labia nora, Bartholin's glands, and clitoris. 1.10 IMM UNESYSTEM Introduction. The human body is often described as being at war. By this, it is meant that the body is constantly under attack from things that are trying to do it harm. These include toxins, bacteria, fungi, parasites, and viruses. All of these can, under the right conditions, cause damage and destruction to parts of the body, and if these were left unchecked, the human body would not be able to function. It is the purpose of the immune system to act as the body's own army in defense against this constant stream of possible infections and toxins. The human immune system is divided into two broad groups called the acquired immune system and the innate immune system. The details about these two systems and how they work is dealt with more under their specific pages. This page will deal more with the structures of the immune system, detailing the parts of the body that play a role in immunity. These include 1. The lymphatics, 2. Lymph nodes, 3. Thymus, 4. Spleen. Different types of immunity. The immune system is divided into two parts called the acquired immune system and the innate immune system. While each of these plays a role in defending the body, there are major differences between the two. The innate immune system is always working to protect the body and does not require any special preparation to stop infection. The acquired immune system needs to be primed before it can work to its full effectiveness, though, and is only really effective after it has seen a possible infective agent before. Structure and organs of the immune system, the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is almost equivalent to the blood vessels. Only instead of carrying blood through the body, the lymphatic system carries a substance called lymph. Lymph is excess tissue fluid that has been drained from the body compartments. Lymphatic fluid is usually clear, watery, and has the same constitution as the blood, but without any cells. The lymphatic system is a complex network of lymphatic vessels that carry the lymph, along which there are occasional lymph nodes. After the lymphatic system has collected all the lymph, this passes through the lymph nodes before being put back into the blood via a large vein just below the neck. In the lymphatic system, there are lots of cells called lymphocytes, the TNP cells that circulate around and are part of the acquired immune system. Lymphoid tissue is scattered throughout the body and is home to the lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are packed into clusters in the walls of parts of the body that are often exposed to foreign substances. These sites include the gastrointestinal system, as well as the tonsils, which play a role in protecting the body from any airborne infections. Lymph nodes are small, oval structures that can be anywhere from 1 to 25 big. Blood vessels and nerves attached to the lymph nodes, as well as two sets of lymphatic vessels, those that enter the lymph node and those that leave it. The lymph enters from one side and slowly moves past all the cells of the lymph node before leaving through the other lymphatic vessel. This allows the lymph time to access as many of the lymphatic cells as possible. In the lymph node, there is a dense packaging of immune cells such as macrophages. These are the big eaters and will engulf and destroy anything dangerous that they can. They also play a role in showing these substances to the T and B cells, which is described in more detail under the acquired immune system. The lymph nodes are there as a filter for the lymph before it re enters the venous system. 99% of all the foreign substances that arrive at the lymph node are removed. Thymus. The thymus is a lymphoid organ located in the lower part of the neck and the front of the chest. With age, the thymus becomes smaller and loses most of its active immune cells. The outside of the thymus contains lymphoid stem cells, which are immature cells, still capable of growing that divide rapidly, producing cells that mature into T cells. These T cells then migrate to the middle of the thymus. Detail of their growth is discussed under the acquired immune system. There are also cells in the thymus that release hormones signaling chemicals that cause T cells to grow. Spleen. The spleen is the largest of the lymphoid organs. It is usually purple in color and located in the upper left of the abdomen, the belly. The spleen is located behind the stomach, in front of the diaphragm, the muscle used for breathing, and next to the left kidney. The spleen can vary in size and shape dramatically. However, it is usually about 12 long and 7 wide, about the size of a clenched fist. The spleen contains large amounts of blood that is periodically pushes into the circulation by contraction of some tiny muscles that surround it. There are two different parts to the spleen, each with a different function. The red pulp is named because of its color and its role is to filter the blood. It does this by having tiny holes in its blood vessels that only allow some types of blood cells through. The blood cells that are a little older or in any way defective are not flexible enough to squeeze through these holes and so get stuck. These stuck cells are then eaten by the macrophages. The white pulp is basically areas of lymphoid tissue in the middle of the spleen. There are areas filled with T cells and B cells. These make up about 5 20% of the spleen. There are lots more of the B cells in younger people than there are in older people, and their numbers in the spleen decrease with age. Bone marrow. Every cell involved in a person's immune system is initially derived from bone marrow. These cells form through a process referred to as hematopoiesis. During hematopoiesis, bone marrow derived stem cells differentiate into one of two things: either mature cells of the immune system or precursors of cells which then migrate out of the person's bone marrow, continuing their maturation elsewhere in the body. Bone marrow produces B cells, killer cells, immature thymocytes and granulocytes, as well as platelets and red blood cells. 1.11 INTEGUMENTA or YSYSTEM introduction. The integumentary system consists of the skin, hair, nails, the subcutaneous tissue below the skin, and assorted glands. The most obvious function of the integumentary system is the protection that the skin gives to underlying tissues. The skin not only keeps most harmful substances out, but also prevents the loss of fluids. A major function of the subcutaneous tissue is to connect the skin to underlying tissues such as muscles. Hair on the scalp provides insulation from cold for the head. The hair of eyelashes and eyebrows helps keep dust and perspiration out of the eyes, and the hair in our nostrils helps keep dust out of the nasal cavities. Any other hair on our bodies no longer serves a function, but is an evolutionary remnant. Nails protect the tips of fingers and toes from mechanical injury. Fingernails give the fingers greater ability to pick up small objects. There are four types of glands in the integumentary system: sudoriferous glands, sebaceous glands, ceruminous glands, and mammary glands. Sudoriferous glands are sweat producing glands. These are important to help maintain body temperature. Sebaceous glands are oil producing glands which help inhibit bacteria, keep us waterproof, and prevent our hair and skin from drying out. Ceruminous glands produce airwax, which keeps the outer surface of the eardrum pliable and prevents drying. Mammary glands produce milk. Functions of the integumentary system: the integumentary system has many functions, most of which are involved in protecting you and regulating your body's internal functions in a variety of ways. 1. Protects the body's internal living tissues and organs. 2. Protects against invasion by infectious organisms. 3. Protects the body from dehydration. 4. Protects the body against abrupt changes in temperature. 5. Helps dispose of waste materials. 6. Acts as a receptor for touch, pressure, pain, heat, and cold. 7. Stores water and fat. 8. Generate vitamin D through exposure to ultraviolet light. Skin. The integumentary system is the largest of the body's organ systems. In humans, this system accounts for about 12 to 15% of total body weight and covers 1.5 minus 2 of surface area. It distinguishes, separates, and protects the organism from its surroundings. Small bodied invertebrates of aquatic or continually moist habitats respire using the outer layer integument. This gas exchange system, where gases simply diffuse into and out of the interstitial fluid, is called integumentary exchange. The human skin integument is composed of a minimum of three major layers of tissue: the epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis. The epidermis forms the outermost layer, providing the initial barrier to the external environment. Beneath this, the dermis comprises two sections: the papillary and reticular layers, and contains connective tissues, vessels, glands, follicles, hair roots, sensory nerve endings, and muscular tissue. The deepest layer is the hypodermis, which is primarily made up of adipose tissue. Substantial collagen bundles anchor the dermis to the hypodermis in a way that permits most areas of the skin to move freely over the deeper tissue layers. Epidermis: this is the top layer of skin made up of epithelial cells. It does not contain blood vessels. Its main function is protection, absorption of nutrients, and homeostasis. In structure, it consists of a keratinized stratified squamous epithelium comprising four types of cells: keratinocytes, melanocytes, Merkel cells, and Langerhans cells. The major cell of the epidermis is the keratinocyte, which produces keratin. Keratin is a fibrous protein that aids in protection. Keratin is also a waterproofing protein. Millions of dead keratinocytes rub off daily. The majority of the skin on the body is keratinized, meaning waterproofed. The only skin on the body that is non keratinized is the lining of skin on the inside of the mouth. Non keratinized cells allow water to stay atop the structure. The protein keratin stiffens epidermal tissue to form fingernails. Nails grow from thin area called the nail matrix. Growth of nails is 1 m per week on average. The lunula is the crescent shape area at the base of the nail. This is a lighter color as it mixes with the matrix cells. Dermis: the dermis is the middle layer of skin, composed of dense irregular connective tissue and areolar connective tissue such as collagen with elastin arranged in a diffusely bundled and woven pattern. The dermis has two layers: the papillary layer, which is the superficial layer and consists of the areolar connective tissue, and the reticular layer, which is the deep layer of the dermis and consists of the dense irregular connective tissue. These layers serve to give elasticity to the integument, allowing stretching and conferring flexibility, while also resisting distortions, wrinkling, and sagging. The dermal layer provides a site for the endings of blood vessels and nerves. Many chromatophores are also stored in this layer, as are the bases of integumental structures such as hair, feathers, and glands. C. Hypodermis, also called the hypoderm, subcutaneous tissue, or superficial fascia, and the bottom layer of the integumentary system. Invertebrates: hypoderm and subcutaneous are from Greek and Latin words respectively for beneath the skin. Types of cells that are found in the hypodermis are fibroblasts, adipose cells, and macrophages. It is derived from the mesoderm, but unlike the dermis, it is not derived from the dermatome region of the mesoderm. In arthropods, the hypodermis is an epidermal layer of cells that secretes the chitinous cuticle. Nails: a nail is a horn-like envelope covering the dorsal aspect of the terminal phalanges of fingers and toes in humans, most non-human primates, and a few other mammals. Nails are similar to claws, which are found on numerous other animals. In common usage, the word nail often refers to the nail plate only. Fingernails and toenails are made of a tough protein called keratin, as are animals' hooves and horns. Along with hair, they are an appendage of the skin. Thanks for watching my video.